Over the past 150 years, Western Australia's unique jarrah forest has been exploited for its timber and maintained by the government for the benefit of the timber industry.
Jarrah takes 500 to 1,000 years to reach maturity. If we log a 50th of the jarrah forest area or take a 50th of its volume, gross bole volume each year, and we progressively go over the whole forest, we're on a 50-year cycle. By the time we've been through all the forest once, we're not going to have much maturity in it, are we?
Half of the original forest has been cleared for agriculture, towns and roads. Most of the remaining forest has been intensively logged.
As we walk through the bush, you can see some of the remnant marries that have not been cut in the past. All the good jarrahs have been taken out and the bush has simply been abandoned. What we're looking at here are some of the mistakes of the past, where the best trees were taken out and space is left in the forest, and then walk away and just leave it to recover by itself.
The native forest timber industry claims that environmentalists come from the city and know nothing about the bush. However, there are many who have worked in the forest most of their lives and who now recognise the problems.
Having worked most of my younger days in the bush, I walk around with my eyes open a fair bit. You're always looking for trees suitable for fence posts or small milling and that sort of thing. It's come to my attention since I've studied a bit of the forests in the area that the jarrah's not coming back. Marries dominating our jarrah forest in the selective stumped area where you can see stumps that have been taken perhaps 60 years ago. There's no reasonable jarrah trees coming back at all.
This is fairly typical of what we can expect to see if we venture into the forest today. However, the forests were not always like this. To the Aboriginals of Western Australia's southwest, the health of the forest was paramount to their survival. The forest was multi-aged and large old trees were everywhere. The rivers were fresh and clean and disease was not a threat to the forest. No animals or birds were threatened with extinction. Foxes, cats, blackberries and thistles were non-existent. And then along came the whitefellas, and felling is what they did. With cross saws and axes, they set about the process of eliminating virtually all the large jarrahs from the forest. After a few short decades, practically all the big jarrahs had gone, leaving only the stumps. And stumps are all we have left today to remind us of what we have lost. Between Bridgetown and Nannup lies an area of forest known as Greater Dalgarup. Dalgarup is one of only a few jarrah forests left that is still in good condition and the only quality forest of significant size in the entire Bridgetown Greenbushes Shire. Recently, environmentalists were taken on a walk through the forest to highlight the ecological value of the area. 30 years ago, the Forest Department made Dalgarup a management priority area for the protection of flora, fauna and landscape. Dalgarup was also listed with the Register of National Estate when it opened in 1976. The listing states that Dalgarup is an important natural landscape which, although previously logged, provides the best available representation of forest type which elsewhere has been degraded by more intensive logging. The listing states that Dalgarup is an important natural landscape which, although previously logged, provides the best available representation of forest type which elsewhere has been degraded by more intensive logging.
Friends of the Forest has been fighting for the protection of Dalgarup since about 1990, and we were shocked to find that the new Labor government's forest policy allows for the logging of Dalgarup, which is now proposed to commence this summer.
As can be seen by the large stumps still in the forest, Dalgarup was once dominated by large jarrah trees. Fortunately, in the early days of logging, only the biggest jarrahs were felled, and the rest of the forest was left relatively unharmed. During the first half of the 20th century, a massive network of railways covered most of the forest region and was used almost exclusively for the removal of logs. This forest track was once a logging railway line. Old railway sleepers can still be seen pushed to one side. Virtually the only large jarrahs to survive the logging onslaught are trees known as hollow butts, as the fire damage meant they were of no commercial value. It's only a matter of time before these trees die. If the timber industry is allowed to continue its intended removal of all medium-sized trees, future generations will never get to see a big jarrah, and the original integrity of the forest will have been destroyed completely. Unlike many other eucalypt, jarrah is remarkably slow growing. Stumps like this one give us an idea of just how slow that growth is. The coppice branches on this stump started growing shortly after the tree was felled between 50 and 80 years ago, and as can be seen, they still have a long way to go before they reach the size of the parent tree. Only small pockets of forest still remain with jarrah large enough to make logging economically viable. These areas are now the target of the native forest timber industry. Dalgarup is one of these rare and precious forests. Remarkably enough, these trees have survived the logging of the past 150 years. However, this is all about to change. If plans for logging are allowed to proceed in Dalgarup, all hope of it ever recovering from the exploitation of European settlers will be lost forever. Not only is this area special for its magnificent jarrah, but it also contains the most northerly natural occurrence of Karri forest and is famous for its ancient blackbutt trees. Greater Dalgarup is made up of 3 different state forests, which include Dalgarup, Nelson and Gregory. The southern section has already been reserved, but much of this area had already been intensively logged. The remainder is available for logging, with the middle section, from west to east, due to be logged this summer. The region provides 3 important water catchments. To the south, the start of the Donnelly River. To the east, Marrinup Brook, which, along with Gregory Brook to the west, feeds into the Blackwood River. Environmentalists are proposing that this area be included as part of a Greater Dalgarup National Park. Important tourist sites already exist in the forests, including the Bridgetown Jarrah Park, Karri Gully, Gregory Brook Campsite, and a section of the Bibbulmun Track. With the use of heavy machinery, modern forest logging all but destroys the Aboriginal heritage in the area.
There is Aboriginal presence in the forest. We have stone artefacts that are in the area, but we also have markings on the trees. We have a collection of stones that have come from this area. This, of course, is the country in which Gondwana land. It's assumed that Gondwana land was of this part of Australia, and so therefore it is very significant in regard to very early history of man. And these forests, of course, if they're going to be cut down now, they'll never be able to put them up again next week or whatever. So there needs to be now another assessment done by the government with the assistance of local Aboriginal elders.
Aboriginal people have the belief that we don't own the land, we belong to the land, and the land is the budger, and the budger is the mother, and she gives us everything we need if we look after her. But unfortunately, people tend to not look after her as much as they should, and if you look all around the world, you can see the mothers getting pretty angry.